can, now, you told me a little bit about how you moved from Chagrin Falls to Cleveland Heights.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me about the transition into East Cleveland.
Yeah. You know, it was all about the house. I've always wanted to live in a century home, and in East Cleveland there are these beautiful homes built by John D. Rockefeller, you know, and so it has its historical connections. I have a picture of John D. Rockefeller hanging up in the front hallway. Not that I necessarily admire him, but both of our fathers worked for the Standard Oil Company, so it was almost like it's like this whole little, you know, concept thing going on where we're all connected in this really interesting way through a company that I do not esteem at all. but that's now, you know, all these things happen then. But I love the house. It was just right for the three of us. My daughter was still with us when we moved in here. And it's perfect for two of us, probably more than we need, you know. My neighborhood is so comfortable. There was a lot of diversity on this street. I wasn't aware of all of it when I moved in, but there are many people of color. There are Hispanic people. There was some Asian people lived down the street. There were like 3 houses in a row of just lesbian couples, which is pretty unusual. Lots of gay people here. That's changing somewhat. It seems to be kind of going back to being more typical of other parts of East Cleveland. There are many more African American people than there were, but still, I mean, friends, sometimes they fit in really well in the sense of being social. We do have quite a few parties and things, and some of them attend. Some of my good friends here are of different races, and I don't talk about religions much with people anymore, but I assume they're different religion than me, that I have, but I just really like it. It's almost reminiscent of camp. When I was a kid, I used to go to these church camps that my aunt, and everybody went to these things. I mean, most of my friends had no black friends, but I had ones at camp at least. So I just felt always, pretty comfortable with that.
And what year was it that you moved here?
1994, I think it was.
So prior to that, did you have any ideas or thoughts or images of East Cleveland before you moved here? I think they were pretty negative. I think they came from what you read in the media. At the time, it was called the murder capital of Ohio, and you knew it as a place of, now as a social worker, I thought of it as a place where there was poverty, probably lack of opportunities for work, probably more drugs than I would really be comfortable with. And it was kind of down on its luck for that reason. I also thought that politically, they were setting their sights too low. I mean, we had a string of mayors for the town that were criminals, for heaven's sakes. So I knew all that, but I just didn't let that stop me. Maybe Karen will pick that phone up. Shall I pause?
No, it's okay. I don't usually pick it up right away anyway. I have to read the caller ID before I do. So I did, but I didn't, I wasn't going to let that dissuade me. We made the decision to move here largely because of the house and the neighborhood. We thought it was really beautiful and just right for us. We like to be in a place where there's some gardening and some trees and flowers, but you're also close enough to the city to eat out. We like to go to the theater and we like to go to concerts and things like that. So in terms of location, it was ideal. It's so hard to think back. There's been such a renaissance of the surrounding area since. I'm trying to think about what it was like in the mid-90s. I think the neighborhood was more Nirvana-like in a way, for a gay couple to live in. But the surrounding area was a little more difficult. But I wasn't afraid of it. I mean, I still travel into Cleveland by going down Superior Road, even with the top down on my car in the middle of summer. Things like that don't bother me. But I grew up in New York, so, there were places like that I always passed through. And I was lucky enough to become friendly with the mayor who was elected, I guess it's about 6 to 8 years ago, Gary Norton. I haven't seen or been as close to him since the last election because I actually backed the person who ran against him. But that had a lot to do with LGBT politics and things. It wasn't that I necessarily had any problem with him. I was just pretty pro Jordan. So, you know, I think he may have taken it badly. I haven't seen or talked with him since.
Well, he's been pretty encumbered by
Yeah, I'm sure.
issues.
I really think he was trying to do a good job. He was certainly better than what we had had before.
So we've sort of skirted on this, but what are your fondest memories of East Cleveland?
Fondest memories of East Cleveland. Well, one of my memories is kind of a funny one. And it has to do with East Cleveland, but it has to do with me in East Cleveland. And that was when I joined the Central Committee of the Democratic Party. And I wanted to be on the committee because we thought it would be good for Stonewall to have at least some representation of the LGBT community at the Democratic Party things. And seeing that Gary was the current liaison to that, or I guess was Central Committee person elected from here, I asked him if he wanted that job still, if he liked it, if he was going to continue with it when he was elected the mayor. And he said that he did. And I said, okay, I don't want to, I'm certainly not going to go against you. It would be ridiculous to think that I could beat you for one thing. And because nobody knows me as a political person, I was just kind of counting on the fact that if nobody knew and nobody cared, maybe I would get enough votes to win the seat. But he said he did, but he appointed me to the executive committee. And one of my funniest memories was the time that I went to a committee meeting, one of these big ones, and I was the only one from East Cleveland that showed up. So he said, and I used to go to all of them. So when they said, and who's here from the city of East Cleveland, I raised my hand and everybody laughed. So I thought that was pretty funny, and I hope people took something from that I wasn't afraid to get involved, and that I felt as much a part of East Cleveland as anybody else does. The fact that I don't suffer from any of the, entrenched problems that other people do didn't mean that I didn't care about my community and I didn't want to see it do well. And a lot of people around here tell people that they're from East Cleveland. From Cleveland Heights. I told everybody at work I moved to East Cleveland. And they're like, oh, really? And I said, yeah, it's great. You should come see it. Come to my house, So there's always been this kind of schizophrenic relationship with the city. There are parts of it that I really love. I still walk in the park all the time. I've always really enjoyed some of this very casual social interaction, things like going to the post office. So you're so much more likely to get somebody to help you carry your packages out in East Cleveland than you are in Cleveland Heights. And that's just the way people are that are different. People here, especially older men, I find very friendly, very helpful. And to anybody, they didn't not help me because I was a white woman. I did find it more difficult to get involved in the politics here. I used to go to some meetings and then not be notified of other ones. And I don't know whether that's because I come across kind of strong and people thought I might want to take over, which I didn't. I really just wanted to learn the city, but that is sort of my style, I guess, and I could understand that. They would sometimes call up at the very end and say, everything fell through, can you fix it? And I was like, no. So I wasn't too proud of that, but I did it a couple of times.
So are you currently now involved in any of the political issues in East Cleveland?
I would say I'm not involved in any issues. I am aware of some issues and have talked with neighbors about them and sort of tried to reach out in other ways that haven't worked out. And those two issues, well, one is passed, and that was about the library. I was very unhappy with the decision about the library because I'm a library person and I go to the Cleveland Heights Library. So I'd like to be able to come here and have them have more resources and make that more a part of my connection with my town here. But I felt like I think that the decision that led to
people's resistance to joining the larger network of libraries is the same kind of mentality that prevents them from considering the possibility of annexing the city to Cleveland. And I don't know all the ups and downs about that. I do understand when people say we're afraid of losing our heritage, our connection with our past. But I don't think like that very well. You can see from my life that I tend to look forward. And I'm not saying that that's a better way or the only way. I understand wanting to hang on to your culture. But to me, the culture is one of poverty, joblessness. I just think that can be fixed. I just think that can be changed. And at least considering the idea of joining with Cleveland should be approached with more of an open mind, to at least hear what the pros and cons are and what Cleveland gets out of it, what East Cleveland gets out of it. Now, that's the one on the table. I would also consider, if annexing the city to Cleveland Heights, that would also be great. But I've never seen anybody at Cleveland Heights express an interest.
Have you attended any of the meetings that
No.
are discussing the issues of merging, I guess they're called?
I haven't.
Cleveland?
And I would like to, but I haven't because it just kind of started at a time when it was difficult for me to find any time other than what I was devoting to Stonewall. But I would like to do that. I mean, now that, as I said, Karen's mother is in a place where she's getting better care, and we don't need to constantly be moving dinner times around and going here and going there on that basis, I'm interested. Actually, George Forbes called me to ask my opinion about it, and I wasn't there, and I did call him back several times, but he didn't return my call. So I was hoping that if I ever ran into him someplace soon, I would bring it up again.
Well,
So
he's accepted our invitation.
I do, yes. I know he's going to be at one of our Stonewall meetings, so I intend to approach him and say, you called me, I am interested. I'd like to know more about your ideas and see what you think about it.
In what ways has the city of East Cleveland changed over time?
Over the time I've been in it, or all time?
Over the time that you've been aware of it or in it?
Well, I think it's improved to some extent. My differences with Gary Norton aside, I mean, I do think he works really hard to try to make it better. And I think that people feel good about that, and that helps them. I sometimes get on these phone calls where a lot of people are talking about what's going on, and it seems people seem more hopeful, maybe a little more optimistic about the city's direction. I just don't think they have a plan. I don't know what the plan is, if they have one, just to bring more industry or more merchants or anything into the to places where people can get to those jobs and there, or to train them. But one of the reasons why I hesitated to even do this interview is that I may not even know as much as I should about some of the questions you're asking about East Cleveland. So.
Well, you know how you feel.
I do. I feel. Yeah, I feel. I feel discouraged about the two issues that I mentioned, because all I have heard is people saying from here saying no, that they don't want it. The library thing and the annexation thing. Yeah.
Now, when you were talking about the library and you said that you understood that people wanted to maintain their culture, are you of the mind that merging the libraries would have destroyed culture?
No, I was not. I didn't think so. Any more than I think East Cleveland would lose its culture, any more than Ohio City has, or Tremont has, or University Circle has. I mean, they all have their unique cultures, and I don't think any of the good parts of that is necessarily going to be lost. I think you can hang on to that and still, get up and go to work every day.
So, again, how has it changed over time?
I don't really know. I think that it's changed a little bit for the better, but I don't want to sound naive. I mean, I don't see great changes, say, if you drive down Euclid Avenue or anything like that. I just think that from the governmental or political side, it seems to be better than it was. And well, it was terrible when I came. I think we had a person who had been accused of manslaughter, who was it was the mayor then, so it's definitely gotten better. So maybe I've got those in the wrong order. Mr. Ononwa used to live around the corner, so if he was still in, that was before Samantha Goggins. Yeah.
What do you think contributed to the changes?
I don't know. I think some of the things Gary did in terms of trying to deal with vacant properties and using some of the government resources that were available to him at the time were good things, and people saw him doing that, and I think they felt more hopeful and optimistic on that basis. I think he did take care of small things that people had going on that needed to be fixed. But at the same time, I mean, the whole country has gone into a recession, and certainly I think the African American population has probably been hurt more than most, and we hardly ever hear about that. But you certainly don't see a resurgence in, places to work or, people improving their lot. So maybe for the family life or, regular life as a citizen, there hasn't been as much improvement as I hoped there was, or that I think there was.
So, the next question is, how has race or racism,
Oh, sorry.
how has race or racism impacted on you personally?
On me personally. My own racism or other people's racism towards me or in general?
How has race or racism impacted on you personally?
Okay. I am interested in race. I like, from an intellectual point of view, I enjoy listening, for example, Ta-Nehisi Coates' address to the City Club. I certainly watched that. I've read his articles. I'm blown away by how he connected so much historical, terrible things to the way things are today. And it tells me that the more facts I have, and the more I learn, and the more I know, the easier it is.
You're referring to his presentation about
Reparations.
reparations.
Yeah, he makes the case for reparations, which I think was the title of the article in the Atlantic. And I haven't gotten all the way through the article yet. I saw the City Club thing first, and I'm about halfway through that. And I'm also politically, I think, progressive, very tolerant of. I hate the word tolerant. I don't know why I used it. Very accepting of differences among people. I wouldn't like to think people are tolerating me for being gay, so I don't like that word. I take it back. I was reading a thing about how many friends people have of different races. It was on Facebook, and I only have about 3 black friends. So that feels wrong to me living here. I mean, you're one of them. So I guess I don't know what that says, but at least there's 3, I guess. So I know a lot more people, at least, especially among political leaders. I'm friendly with them. I guess I wouldn't say they were my friends. And then on the negative side, the only thing I find in my own racism is that when I see a bunch of teenage or young boys walking down the street in the middle of the night being really loud, I have to remind myself that they would be just as loud and just as obnoxious if they were white. But I look out there and I'm like, oh, here goes the neighborhood. and I immediately say, that's stupid. That's not right. So that's my racism, and I need to confront it constantly because it's just annoying to see that kind of behavior. But it's more teenage boy behavior than any other kind of behavior. I know, because I had a teenage boy and he was white.
How has it impacted on the city of East Cleveland, racism?
Racism? I don't know the answer to that question. One of the things that I often wonder about or guess about is if we don't set our sights too low because of racism, internalized self-racism, I mean. Are we not expecting enough of our leaders because we're poor, or we're mostly African American, or because we don't have enough jobs? Are we allowing people to get away with crazy behavior because we feel like we can't do any better? So that's the only thing I can think of for that issue.
You're describing boundaries that are self-imposed.
Exactly.
That narrow one's ability to change or improve.
I think so.
Is any of that supported by racism coming externally?
Yeah, probably in the press, in the media, from the government, how, the way they look at the schools around here. And I mean, I'm a big proponent of public schools, so I read these things, and it's always the African American communities. I'm not just here, but in the Heights, Warrensville Heights, Maple Heights, some of those places that, they're just like these scathing reports. And if you read any of the more factual information about how to run schools, you know very well that an infusion of money would help a lot, but you don't get it. People, bitch and moan about the schools, but, let's see some checks then. That would help a lot to have good teachers.
You remind me of an instance, I think it was before Stephanie Tubbs-Jones passed away, where Cleveland schools had received money all year long from the state, and then in April, the state March, the state required them to return all the money they wrote, and
I do remember that.
Made all of their programs, their innovative
Yeah.
programs, crash.
Right.
Because the money was returned. It's never found its way back up since.
But who asked for that money? Was that when we had Ted Strickland as a governor, or is it before that?
I think it was
Taft?
before that. I think it was before that. I think it was Taft that removed.
I remember it, but I don't remember exactly when that happened. It seems like Stephanie's not been gone that long.
Now, here's a little different question. How has inequality impacted on you personally? I'm pretty privileged. I was born to people who kind of lived the American dream, in the sense that they did well and they expected their kids to do better. And although all of the children in my family were girls, we were expected to do well, to get through college, to work if we wanted. And I'm sure that my father expected me to be a doctor. That's what I was supposed to do. And I went to be a psychologist instead. I couldn't pass calculus twice, so I decided to be a psychologist. And then since then, I'm trying to think about the impact of inequality on a person who sits near the top. I'm not wealthy, but I might be someday. And I've always known that. And I think the way it has affected me most was that when I decided to have a relationship with a woman instead of staying with my husband, it took me a long time to realize that I was in danger. I didn't know it. Like, I was quite outward about it, and people used to say, "You can't do that here. You can't kiss her goodbye at the bus stop. You can't hold hands walking down the street." I didn't see why. I had grown up figuring I could do pretty much what I pleased. So it's only on the, or it is, the only part I'm really aware of is on the being female or being, I mean, I'm certainly aware of the inequality of women in so many ways. I was a feminist. I was now president when I was in Maryland. I was pretty active because I lived near Washington, which was a lot of fun, being down there and being an activist in that way. So I'm not naive about how women were treated, but we worked on that, and I think we've kind of come a long way. Certainly not done. In fact, I'm sure they would strip away most of the rights we've gained if they could, some of the people that are in power now. But I kind of played the whole thing again as a gay woman. Once I realized what was going on, that had a lot of effect on me because I'm like, I'm not putting up with that. So, you know, I kind of I started volunteering pretty early after Karen and I were together. It was only about 2 years before I joined the board of the LGBT Center. Actually, I worked the hotline first, and then joined the board when someone asked me, and then I joined the board again, and then so I was doing that for separate terms of 6 years each, and then finally realized that it just wasn't punchy enough for me, and I was going to go politics, so I got into Stonewall. So it's affected me in that way, in that I think I am seen as an activist in the community. I'm not the kind of person who's necessarily well known. I don't do something that's very public, but people, you know, who kind of go through the endorsement and political process that Stonewall oversees, I'm their connection. So a lot of people do know me in that regard, and I'm proud of that. I feel good about that. It doesn't mean I need to take the stage ever. So
tell me, how was your coming out process? I mean, were you aware that you were a lesbian when you were married?
No.
To your husband?
Nope. And I don't know that I was. I've talked with a lot of women who kind of came to this realization when they were mature, after they had been married. And I don't necessarily think that I changed from a straight person to a lesbian, or that I was a lesbian and didn't know it. I think that I am just pretty fluid in terms of who I love. And I think that I could love perhaps a person of either gender, but I'd rather have my relationships be with women. I think they're steadier, I can trust them better, they treat me better, so all those reasons.
One more question about that, because that is the one point, or that and your being a woman are the 2 points that you've identified as impacting on you in terms of inequality in the way you're related to.
Right.
Is that correct?
Yes.
So.
Well, for example, thinking that I was going to get pregnant right away when I was in the Department of Welfare because I was Catholic and married and female. Which turned out to be right. So it's hardly, I can hardly, complain about it too much. But that was an expectation that was kind of unfair. I thought it was a career for me at the time, that I would move up.
So external to you and your expectations was the idea that because you were a woman and married, you were going to not be in the workforce.
Exactly.
External to your home for any length of time.
Right.
And so therefore they didn't have to pay you as much, they didn't have to move you up when you deserved it, and none of
Right.
those things. When you, did you come out as a lesbian because you met your partner?
Yes.
Your ultimate
Yeah.
partner? surprise.
Yeah. Yes. It was a surprise to a lot of my friends who were lesbians. And I mean, I had friends who were lesbians, and I also had friends who were, I guess you would call celibate, kind of like on the fence all the time, you know, and never had close relationships at all. And when I finally told them about this, they were like, oh my God. It's like one of them said, oh, shoot, I missed my chance. So I said, oh, well, who knew? You know, it's not like I was acting coy or anything. I just didn't. But I accepted it completely when it happened. I mean, I didn't struggle with it for a long time at all. I think that's a little strange.
Well, it's your experience.
Yeah.
You're walking through the
Right.
process. How has inequality impacted on the city of East Cleveland?
Inequality. You mean kind of comparing people who are less equal than more? Well, let's see. There's certainly the racial inequality that's probably pretty obvious, which we talked about before. On the other hand, I think that has made a lot of the people in the government here, in the city council, for example, much more open to some of the requests that we, as an LGBT community member, made of them. They got it really quickly. And in fact, their housing ordinances were already in place before we ever spoke up about it or maybe even thought about that kind of issue.
And the housing ordinance you're referring to are?
That you can have a number of people, I think, it doesn't need to be a nuclear family or a couple or a male-female couple or something like that to live in a house. Is that it?
And
Is that all? Is there more to it than that?
yes, a non-discrimination clause in the housing.
Yeah.
For lesbians and
Okay,
gays.
right.
Um,
I didn't know that they specified that. I thought that it was that you could have two women or two men living in a place and you could get a place together, you could own a place together, that kind of stuff.
Well, and what's interesting about that, since we're talking about inequality, is the fact that even though it was explicitly stated about lesbians and gays, the LGBT organizations didn't see it
Yeah.
in East Cleveland, didn't note it, didn't write about it, didn't.
Did they not
speak
know
it.
about it, or
Even after they were told, it wasn't listed.
do you think that was intentional, or did they just not get it?
I don't know.
I mean, it was a starting place to.
I doubt if it was intentional. These are organizations that really want to promote
Right.
lesbian and gay rights, but still they didn't see it when it came from East Cleveland.
Yeah, but there are lots of things that some parts of the gay community don't accept about gay culture that others do. So I just wondered if it was, I don't know, if there was any reason that you knew why they wouldn't kind of take it and sort of latch onto it as a starting place to get something more in terms of equality for the LGBT members of this community. But who knows?
I don't know why. I've asked about that, but I haven't gotten a good answer.
Huh.
Can you recollect a memory or instances when the community of East Cleveland fought for something?
Fought for something. You know, I guess to be fair, they must have fought to have a new middle school instead of saving the beautiful building that I'm thinking it's hard for me to come up for because I was always on the other side to get the school built. Must have fought for that. Someone must have fought to keep the library the way it was. I know that they fought about Huron Hospital to not have that torn down, but it was torn down anyway. And I was definitely not for that. yeah, yeah. I thought we lost a lot of jobs because of that, and a kind of an anchor in some ways on the medical side, and I just thought that was a real loss, and a loss for which there was some compensation, but certainly not equal to what it meant to the community. I can't think of much else except, stupid little things.
Stupid little things.
Like getting the potholes fixed and getting the plow down here a little earlier. So it is hard to live in a city where the services are so sporadic. I mean, there have been times when I couldn't get to work because the streets don't get plowed. So, but everybody here suffers from that. And staying home is not the worst thing in the world, is it? So I put up with it.
Have you been a part of any of the instances that you named where the community fought for something?
No.
Can you tell me why?
Just because two reasons. One is that I spend enough time doing what I already do, which is working for the LGBT community and working for it in a political way. And it takes up a lot of time. I like it. I think it's worthwhile. It's working, so I do it. And I like the people that I work with as well. So that's also, in many ways, my social circle. Secondly, when I did try to get involved in things around the community, I found some pushback. It was kind of subtle. It was, as I mentioned, not being called to be told about meetings, saying that you're interested in something and then not knowing what's going on, or no one calls you and lets you know. And I sort of quickly decided that that might be because I was white and this is being done by African American people, and so I just kind of backed away.
So that is a place where race impacted on you.
It is, yes. Good pickup. You're right.
And your response to it is to just let it be.
I did, because I was enough involved in things that, it's not like I felt isolated. I was enough involved in other things that were very satisfying to me anyway. And it's not like I'm losing anything personally by not, I don't suffer from that.
Is East Cleveland an African American city?
Mostly. What is it like? 90%? I would say it is.
So Chagrin Falls is what percent white?
I don't really know. Pretty much.
Pretty
all.
much.
Yeah.
So you lived in both environments.
Mm-hmm.
You tolerate this one, it seems, better than you tolerated the other.
Yeah.
Why is that?
I guess because I didn't feel in Chagrin Falls like there was any way for me to grow as a person, to expand my mind, to become less self-serving, less intolerant, or to become, more open and accepting. And here there are opportunities every day to shop in different kinds of stores, to have different kind of people at the gas station, to have different kind of community leaders, police, government officials, who think in different ways than I do. And while it sometimes will rankle a little bit if things are not working out to my benefit, because I do like to have things go my way, I also feel like it makes my life more worthwhile in general. When I was in Chagrin Falls, everything was so easy. Everybody was so entitled to what they had. They took things that weren't theirs. They swapped spouses. I mean, they did all kinds of crazy things that I was kind of appalled by. And yet, during the daylight hours, it was a great place for kids, but it was almost like a soap opera. You've got this one thing going on that's the obvious, and then all this undercurrent of horribleness underneath. Here, everything's kind of in the open. I like that too. You know, you kind of know what you've got.
Well, now, you said you shop. Do you shop in East Cleveland?
No, I did, but when they started giving me tickets for going 2 or 3 miles over the speed limit in a couple of places, I stopped. So I try not to drive through East Cleveland anymore. And I spoke to the mayor about it too, and he, not Gary, but this was back when Brewer was the mayor. And I said that I had been unfairly ticketed. If you turn left down the end of my street, there is no street sign that says 25. The 25 thing is way beyond me up there. And so twice I got tickets without ever knowing about it. And I did try to appeal them because I wasn't going fast. I was just going 30. And he said, well, stop coming here. And I was like, all right, fine. That's what you want. I mean, if that's what you think you can get out of this. So, and I've complained about the cameras, you know, since then, but I haven't gotten any more tickets because I go south.
What would make you become more involved in the city?
I think knowing that there was a more, maybe just a little bit more of a heterogeneous group working on something. And I know of some like that too, but they haven't been interesting to me. So I think that's a possibility, but I haven't done much to check them out. But I know that there are some things that people from, you know, my neighborhood here are working on, or other white people or Hispanic people or, you know, Asian people. Just not a group of people who are going to put up this front that you're ruining our community by saying these things. I want to be able to say what I want. You don't have to do it, but.
So it sounds to me like a lot of race-based issues are impacting on your ability to, or your interest in being involved in East Cleveland.
I wouldn't say a lot. I would say occasional. I mean, I've been living here for 20 years. I'm trying to dredge up, you know, things from years ago too to share with you, but I wouldn't say anything like this, like that has happened in a long time.
Well,
but there are several instances, if that's what you mean.
of the institutions that are in East Cleveland, do you use any of them? The library, the theater?
Not lately. Not too many.
Because
Well, I went to the post office, found out they don't deliver mail anymore. I went to, I've gone to a couple of restaurants. I forgot about that. I haven't gone to restaurants. And they're fine, they're good. So those are some businesses that I do frequent. I don't buy much anymore, except online. I haven't called the police in a long time. Called the fire department, but Cleveland Heights showed up. Trying to think of other institutions. Well, certainly McGregor.
Yeah, McGregor,
Mhm.
and then, but there's a community theater. And the building that Cleveland Clinic replaced, well, I guess it's not fair to call it a replacement, but the STJ Health Center is another institution in the city
Mm-hmm.
that has Tai Chi and line dancing and other kinds of activities in it. Were you aware of any of those?
No,
It's
but I don't join stuff like that to start with.
How have surrounding institutions, now these are institutions outside of East Cleveland,
Mhm.
and cities impacted on the city of East Cleveland?
Well, in a positive way, I've paid attention to the things that East Cleveland has been able to do with University Circle and some of the new build-ups out there, and it's a place where I spend a lot of time in the university circle. I love to visit the museum. If I've got nothing to do, I'll just go over and sit and walk around and look at stuff, and I take my grandchildren to the museums a lot and the botanical gardens. So we have passes, I guess, to 4 or 5 of the institutions over there, and we go pretty frequently. And so I have really liked the contribution that they have made to East Cleveland and vice versa, how East Cleveland has been able to provide, land and building for, I guess, a growing student population as well as all the people who work in University Circle. Let's see, next surrounding would be, I guess, Cleveland Heights. I live in a place where I see the plow come up and then turn around and go back the other way when it snows. So let's see. As I said, the fire department came. Well, in the Forest Hill Homeowners Association, it's like 3/4 Cleveland Heights, 1/4 East Cleveland. So there's a lot of that kind of back and forth, and I'm sure that together we impact how the Homeowners Association works here. So that's a positive association for sure.
What do they do?
Just maintaining buildings, making sure that people just don't, get a ladder and start tearing their slate roofs off, that kind of thing, which they do because they're hard to maintain.
And any other institutions or cities? We've talked about 2 cities now, Cleveland and
Mm-hmm.
Cleveland Heights.
Mm-hmm.
Are there any other institutions that impact or, that impact on these?
Institutions. I don't know. Can you give examples of things other people might have mentioned? I'm not sure what
There's Case Western Reserve. There's
the university.
Cleveland Clinic. Other institutions like that.
I have no idea what. I know that having the Cleveland Clinic where it is provides us with outstanding medical care. I assume it also provides jobs for a lot of people, so I would say that's probably pretty positive. Although I hate seeing, a hospital take up that many city blocks, but there it is. And the other thing you said was the Case Western, the university. I don't know.
Do you think they have any contact or do anything substantial with the city of East Cleveland or with people of East Cleveland?
Case Western? That's a quiz, right?
No,
I don't know.
just a question.
I don't know.
Well, to be clear, this project is a project of Case Western Reserve
Well, there you go.
University. So
Okay.
that's one way in which the university is impacting, hopefully, but certainly relating to East Cleveland.
Mm-hmm. Well, I always think it has a positive impact to have universities around, but I didn't know specifically if they have anything going on with the city of East Cleveland or, vice versa. So I'm glad to hear.
What's your vision for the future of East Cleveland?
Well, I would love it if more of East Cleveland was kind of like here. I think that would be great. I think that the first step needs to be to find ways to get people training and work. And how that happens, I guess, happens through, larger government entities. I'm sure that we don't, as a city, have the means to provide everything that's necessary here. But I truly believe that people would do better if they had ways of feeling, productive in their lives and also earn the money to buy what they need. But I tend to be really work-oriented, and I'm sure there are lots of other things like not having quite so many bad empty spaces or abandoned homes. I do think they're working on that, but it seems slow. And I don't mean slow in comparison to what I expect. It's just that after all these years, there's still a lot of, but maybe they're newly abandoned, I don't know. I would just like to see streets better, the facilities better for kids especially. I always want to say the school's better, but the school it looks good, and I hear and I kind of keep track of great things happening through a lot of the kids that are in the school, but I'm sure there are, the other side of the coin is there as well. But that's true of most schools.
So in terms of major issues that need to be addressed in order to make the city better, a better neighborhood, a better community, a better city,
Mm-hmm.
what do you think are the hierarchy of needs?
I would say stronger leadership, better schools, better, more employment and educational, I don't mean college, but vocational education or training opportunities for the citizens to get back on their feet if they've lost their jobs. I guess more care of the housing stock. I think we've got some great houses, but we've also got, sometimes old houses, especially, and this one included, can be hard to keep up. It takes a lot of money to keep your slate roof done, and the bricks stand forever, but everything else kind of gets wet after a while, so things get sort of used up. Like, these metal windows are a real pain to keep painted, and as you can see, I don't do the best job with that. One room at a time. I only recently found out about the fact that the post office didn't deliver mail anymore. That was not a big deal at all. But I wonder how many other government kinds of facilities have kind of gone by the wayside, and I'm just not aware of it. There certainly could be others.
Well, there was a big protest when they were going to close the East Cleveland post office in Cleveland, and people protested at least enough to get it to remain open,
Mm-hmm.
even though they don't deliver mail from there.
Yeah.
And if you think about what kinds of governmental entities would be in a city, and you think about the baseline support system that you have to have in a city, any city, no matter what the size. East Cleveland struggles to keep them, to maintain.
Yeah.
If you had a wish list of what would happen in East Cleveland, a wish list with a little practicality in it, meaning something that's possible to do, what would your wish list sound like?
If it was for East Cleveland, I would just go back to the whole idea of more employment opportunities, maybe more merchants, more industry, more small businesses, so that people can work. For me personally, my wish list would be cleaning up that park. I walk in that park every single day. I think it's a beautiful asset. I walk in the woods behind it. But the lake, is always kind of scummy, and it doesn't seem like it should take all that much, especially given the number of people who party in that lake on the weekends. If they charge them just a small amount of money, maybe they could make enough to keep the lake clean. I would also like to see more people interested in leadership in East Cleveland, who have a commitment to the community, and who kind of achieve some of those high standards that I talked about, who don't do dumb stuff and don't lie and don't, who are good people who are really committed to doing a good job. Those would be definitely two things that I think would be a start on my wish list.
I'm not sure whether you have East Cleveland cable. Do you? So my next question has to do with whether you attend the city council meetings.
I don't since, I used to once in a while, not everyone, but up until about 2 years ago, I did, but I don't anymore. I probably wouldn't necessarily go back to that, but I should be attending the Democratic group that Nate does, and it's on the same, if there isn't a Stonewall meeting, which is on the same night, unfortunately, I should at least try to make that, but sometimes they say, oh good, no Stonewall meeting, I can stay home and, have dinner, so.
Now, what would you be prepared to do to participate in making East Cleveland better?
Well, I told you that I don't know if this qualifies to answer your question, but I told you that George Forbes had called me, and I called him back, and I was willing to serve on a panel or a group that was going to at least explore or listen to what would be the pros and cons for the city of East Cleveland to consider this merger, and what would be the pros and cons for the city of Cleveland, so that if it turns out that this is really the best place for us to go, we know what we're dealing with. That's something that I would be interested in. I would also be interested in advancing the work that we have already done, that you were largely responsible for in terms of the LGBT employment policies and an employee handbook and all that kind of stuff for the city of East Cleveland. And I believe that needs some updating in terms of accountabilities and ways of dealing with transgressions if those policies are violated. That wasn't really nailed down. So that would be something that I would be interested in.
Actualizing the Human Rights
Exactly. Yeah.
Commission.
Mm-hmm. Right. That's about it, I guess.
Well, I do appreciate your sharing some time with me. I'd like for you to tell me anything else that you'd like to share before we end our interview.
I can't think of anything we didn't. In fact, I talked about a whole lot of stuff I never imagined that we would be talking about. I can't really think of anything else. I do love my community. I assume it will stay pretty much as it is. I would certainly fight for that. I expect to die here, so I'm not going anywhere. So I like it the way it is, and actually more diversity would please me.
What would it look like?
Oh, it would look kind of all even, I guess. I mean, that's kind of idealistic, but to have more gay people, and also more Hispanic and Asian people, because we've got like half and half of the rest, black and white. So that would be cool. We've got young people, old people, kids. I think we're good.
You said, I believe, help me if I'm wrong, you said you would like to see the rest of East Cleveland more like the environment where you live.
Yes.
Can you tell me what you mean by that?
Yeah, I don't mean houses, and I don't mean trees. I mean how people get along with each other, how we work together to keep our community the best we can, how we kind of talk with each other to let each other. For example, if Forest Hill has that next door website, if anything goes wrong in any house, everybody knows about it. If there are break-ins.
I'm not sure I know what that is.
Okay, it's called Nextdoor. It's a web, it's kind of like a social networking web thing, but it is confined to a particular geography, and this geography is bound around Forest Hill. So we're the last street going north. Well, Glen may be on it, and I think maybe Oak, the one behind. And so people ask for repair advice, or have you seen my cat, or I'm having a party, or let's put together a yard sale. They have meetings, big meetings once a year, small meetings once a month on Saturdays so that everybody can come. And it's kind of like everybody gets to know everybody else's pets and kids, and it's not really about your personal life, but it is about your community life. And I think it makes you feel safe, or at least aware of what you need to be more careful about. And I think it's a good thing.
So it's a closed website?
I'm not sure how closed it is, because some of the people on it come from the Monticello area, which is like going back, over towards the east. And they're not exactly in Forest Hill. I think it's because I checked a box that said that surrounding communities would also be open to me, and I could be open to them. I'm usually checking boxes like that, which tends to confuse me then about why am I getting this information. But it definitely includes all of Forest Hill. Gee, East Cleveland I've always, one thing that bothers me is that you can't find any reports on East Cleveland in the newspaper. I realize it may not be good news, and maybe that's why they don't do it, but I can see the crime reports in Cleveland Heights and what's going on in Cleveland, and then nothing from East Cleveland. It couldn't be all that quiet.
There's a new newspaper that was started by a woman who lives in East Cleveland. It's called Neighborhood Connections. And it really does give a lot of information about what's going on in East Cleveland.
Well, that's something I should pick up to know, because so many of your questions have taught me that I'm kind of, I'm not somebody who just kind of sits and does her own thing. I'm very involved in activities that interest me, but they have not necessarily involved East Cleveland as a community. So I could certainly at least learn what those things are.
Her name is Leslye. I'll try to remember to send
Yeah.
you a link
Yeah, sure.
to her website.
That would be great.
I really enjoyed this, Kate. I hope you did too. And we will provide you with a copy of the interview, so you'll have it. It may take a couple of weeks for you to receive it.
Okay.
But you'll get it from.
Now, I know that you're going to archive these and save them for public access. Does that mean that you're planning on making a show or a movie out of them?
There are several different ways in which we want to use this material to help. If you notice, the name of the project is Voicing and Action.
Uh-huh.
So we're trying to glean from the interviews activities and actions that should be taken, that could be taken by East Cleveland as a whole, and perhaps with the interest and the leadership of people who created the ideas themselves. So they've held periodically theme-based showings of snippets of each interview, and then had community conversations about that in the library.
Interesting.
Yeah, so we'll make sure that you're aware of the
Good.
next ones that are coming.
Yes, good.
Yeah, it's a good thing.
Well, thank you. I've enjoyed it a lot, too.
And there'll be, I believe there is also a documentary that's in the works that will be using some of this material.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to close this out.
Okay.
Now, if you have nothing more to add.
Nothing more.
I
Thanks.
appreciate it. Thank you so much for sharing your time.